Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Living in the Limelight, an Anton Scholl and Friends podcast where we discuss music from the artist and fan perspective. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to another edition of Living in the Limelight. I'm your host, Anton Scholl, and with me is, well, a vocalist of many versatile bands out there. But we'll discuss a couple of the ones that you're in right now. But from Atomic Kings, it's Ken Ronk. How are you?
I'm great. Hi, Anton.
Hey, great to see you and appreciate you taking the time to get on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind of things happening in the music scene out there. A lot of changes to a lot of venues, a lot of venues come and go out in Arizona. But what I wanted to find out first about you is, where are you originally from? Because I want to talk about the differences in music.
I was actually born in Phoenix, spent some time in Idaho, and then moved back to Phoenix when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and pretty much been around Phoenix. Moved to Mesa right out of high school, so I'm pretty much been around.
You know all about the Arizona scene, then.
I do. Yes,
it has changed a lot over the years, and it's interesting that the bands we're going to talk about with you doing, covers, tribute, original, you've done it all. So we're going to talk about the differences in that, but the music scene in general. How has the music scene changed in Arizona over the years?
In the 90s, I would say that the Tempe music scene, Phoenix, the Valley, probably had one of the best music scenes that there was, I think. Back then, a lot of the bands, we supported each other. We have a lot of friends. I still have a lot of great friends from back then, Brett Kaiser and Michael Nitro and John Lawrence, all those guys, and it's good to still see a lot of those guys around. I kind of got out of the scene, I want to say, in the late 90s, and married my wife, and we had some kids. And when I got back in the scene, I guess about 2008, I started doing things again. It didn't feel like the camaraderie was there that used to be. There was a lot of, I don't know if it was the ego, but I didn't see the support that we used to have back in the day. But you know what? Recently, I think that's changed and gone back the other way. I think we have a great music scene here. I know that a lot of us support each other, and it's a pretty tight knit music family, I think, here now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, one of the reasons I got into this, I haven't been able to play out a lot, doing a lot of shows just for personal reasons. And then I realized that the music community here is very tightly knit, and you can almost link everybody together in one way or another. Either everyone has played at one point in time, or someone introduced this person into this band. And it's amazing. And that's why I got into this. I started interviewing people, and everybody I would interview would be like, yes, I know that person, and we have this history. And it just all kind of flowed. It's a really good music scene out here.
I agree.
Yeah. And how has the difference changed in between original music and covers? Because from what I've seen, now I got out of doing covers and I went into original music. I found it a lot more difficult out here because bars or places, anywhere to play, really didn't either want originals. They wanted, covers or tributes, or you had to sell tickets and do the whole, what they call pay to play out here, Yeah. So what have you seen on that?
The original scene, I probably not just in Phoenix, but the original scene is tougher. There's no doubt. I don't know if it's a venue thing, but when a lot of people go out and they want to go have a good time, dance, or do whatever they want to do, they're primarily always going to want to hear music that's familiar with them. They want to hear all their favorite songs. So the original scene is, if you can get something out, get something released and get people familiar with your music, I think you can have a little better luck with that. But the original scene is tough, and a lot of the clubs aren't really letting original bands come in just because the following is so hard. They have their diehard, their friends or family or whatever. But as far as the masses, I think they like to go what they think is familiar. So we've got a lot of great original bands. I know we're friends with the Black Moods and the Gin Blossoms. All those guys obviously are doing great, but I think it's just fewer and far between. But there's a good original scene out there. I don't think it's as big as the cover scene, probably anywhere though, for that matter.
Yeah. What do you think of this whole thing that I had mentioned in regards to pay to play? And bottom line is, pretty well, just so people understand really what that is there's a lot of original bands out there, or a lot of bands that just want to do these bigger venues. And the way that the bigger venues work is that they'll bring you in as either an opening act, or they'll have 4 or 5 bands playing at one night, and they'll give you 100 tickets and say, here, sell these 100 tickets, for $8 a piece. The ticket price is, or to actually sell them for $12 a piece. The ticket price is $12. Sell them for $12 a piece. You give me 8 and you keep 4. So band's going to make essentially $400. So
Right.
what I've noticed on a lot of that is that a lot of these bands aren't able to sell 100 tickets. So they just pay their promoter the $800 and end up giving away the tickets. And then unfortunately, a lot of people don't show up to the venue. Is that something that you've seen more or less of happening now recently with a lot of the venues?
One of the venues I know we have here, the Marquee, it does stuff like that. And I think their biggest thing is some of the bands they bring through probably don't have quite the draw that they want to sell tickets. So they'll bring on, 3 or 5 original bands and local bands. And then they rely on those local bands to sell the tickets for their headliner, who usually it's the local bands that sell more tickets than whatever headliner they brought through. But, a lot of places, maybe it's not tickets, Cactus Jack's, there's a cover charge there. I know 44 has a cover charge, and I think that's fine, honestly. I'm not a fan of the go pick up an envelope full of tickets and then try to bug all your friends to buy tickets to your show. I'm not into that. And we, Atomic Kings, our first show we did over there, we did with Ace Frehley, and they paid us direct. So we didn't have to go down that road. But a lot of bands, they want to play, and the Marquee is it's a great stage, it's a great sound system, and sometimes it's worth it to them. A lot of especially original artists, they don't do it for the money. They do it because they want someone to hear their music, and they want a nice platform to put it on. And the Marquee and maybe the Van Buren, some places like that provide a nice platform for that. So what, if they could break even, it doesn't make any difference to them. They want to get their music out there, and and so they probably don't mind. I think some of the venues take advantage of bands wanting to get on a nice stage with a big PA. So I think some of the venues take advantage of that, but original bands wouldn't want to go play in on a small stage where they can't get their point across, and obviously cover bands are not going to work as a pay to play thing anyway. But
yeah. All
I
right.
don't know if there's any more or less of it. I think it's been fairly steady. And pay to play is nothing new. All through California and the whiskey and all that, it's really kind of all been that way for a long time. I don't think pay to play is a new platform.
Right. Yeah. True. All right. So let's talk about you in general with vocals. At what point in time did you decide that's what I want to do? I'm going to be a singer. What what kind of triggered that for you?
Um, Probably in high school, I had some friends that were really good musicians, good guitar players, and I was about a year or two older than they were, and they would go to a rehearsal. And since I was a year or two older, I had a license and a car, so that always bugged me for the ride, and I'd give them the ride, and I primarily would just sit and watch them jam. And I one day I just ended up with a little microphone stuck into a guitar amp, and thought, well, if I'm going to be here, I might as well, since they don't have a singer. And I've always been a big fan of music, but I don't know if I'm ever made it a point to, hey, this is what I'm going to do, or and I don't know that I ever thought that's what I would become, but I think it just happened, and since I was always a fan of music, um, it worked out great.
Well, the bands that you were in, and still are, in a sense, you still play out every now and again with. You have a Led Zeppelin tribute and
Mhm.
a Bad Company tribute.
Yeah. Mhm.
Of course, two of my favorite bands on there. What kind of prompted that? Because those are two totally different vocal styles,
They are,
in my
yeah,
opinion. I mean, between
they
Paul
are.
Rogers and Robert Plant, it is very different to me, and I don't know that I could. It's hard to adjust to that. What
They're
what
very
what got
different.
you into each one of those?
You know what? They were just my favorite singers. Um, Robert Plant, Freddie Mercury was always some of my favorite singers, and obviously Paul Rogers, Jimmy Dore, have always been some of my favorite singers. So, naturally, whether it's singing or anything you want to do, you tend to kind of want to do it like your favorite, like your idol. Probably if you were a cook, you would want your food to taste like your idol chef's food taste, sort of thing. So
Yeah,
it was. I think I was just led down that road because whatever it is in their voice is what made me want to sing. So naturally, that's what I wanted to do, and I think I welcomed the challenge, to try to cover Paul or cover Robert's voice. If you're going to try to do it, you might as well, strive for the what you think is the best.
sure. Wow. And when I listen to the differences of live recordings versus studio
Hmm.
recording, do you, when you're performing live, do you kind of listen to those when you're doing these particular tributes? Do you listen to those and try to incorporate some of what was done live versus what was done recorded, as because I know a lot of them just stick right to the recorded versions of the songs.
I do. I like to. I like to bring in some of the live stuff. My opinion, if you're just going to play everything just exactly like the record, I think people could just go put the record on. But for me, I like to incorporate some of the live, or take what I think they would have done or said, and incorporate some of that. And sometimes some of the some of the studio albums will have, maybe some effects or tricks that's hard to replicate. So maybe you'll lean over on a version of a live concert that you've seen, and try to do it that way. Just you could probably get a little closer to what it is.
Yeah. Well, what do you think was going on in the, let's see, Houses of the Holy? When Houses of the Holy album came out, with, the song remains the same, Rain Song,
Right.
No Quarter, songs like
Right.
that. Then you hear them live, like in Song Remains the Same. And I personally, I mean, I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan. I have
Right.
hundreds of bootleg albums and recordings, like everyone else does, I'm sure. Um, Never the same way twice. But when I heard the differences in those three songs, complete night and day, when it
Right.
came
Yeah.
to, the recording versus the album. And I just sometimes wonder, like, what was going on there, and why such a massive difference between those two.
You know, it uh, Zeppelin, they were always a big jam band, you know, them and the Dead and you know, some of those guys were always big jam bands. And you know, they had probably played versions of the recorded songs 10 different ways before they recorded it. It's just you know, they were always experimenting. Zeppelin was, and when they would play live, you know, they always played very loose, and they may go into a jam, and you know, they were good enough together to recognize when one of them was going into something different, and you know, probably for the studio that just happened to be the tape was rolling. Had Zeppelin recorded any of those songs a week later, they would probably be completely different. So I think it's just really comparing what they did that one time versus the 20 other times that they do it different. So, you know, they were always reinventing themselves, and they were always changing, or, you know, and I know we in Atomic Kings, we've done the same thing. We, you know, when we've gotten together and rehearsed after the record, we've added stuff that's not on the record just because we like it, or you know, that's cool. I wish we would have done that on the album. But you know, once a song is done and recorded, and that's it, that doesn't mean you can't stop improving. You could always, you know, you can always add stuff anytime you want. So I think Zeppelin was one of those that did that, and I think people like that. You know, to me, when I go to a concert, I don't know if I like them getting too far away from the original where it's unrecognizable. You know, I think some of them take it too far, but you know, and as a band, they probably get bored with playing it the same way.
Right. Well, I know that sometimes when I used to perform some Led Zeppelin music, I did have people coming up to me afterwards and saying, "Wow, that's amazing! You did the live version, you know, and not the recorded version." So, and I even had people coming up to me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I had somebody coming up to me one time and say, you did something from, you know, a 1975 live bootleg from, you know, from Boston. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I did do that. You know, when you hear a what I call a plantism, you know, you hear something in there and you just say it, you know, and it just sounds cool, you know. And so, yeah, I've had people point that out. So the audiences do know.
Yeah, and I know we do that as well. I know in Led Zepplified, we do a lot of improv. We'll put one song in the middle of another. We may tag an ending of a different song onto this song, but you know, I like what you said, plantism there, because you know, we call it Led Zeppelinisms when we play, and that, you know, there were so many different live versions. Really, you could do anything you want, and someone's not going to know that wasn't played that way somewhere sometime. So
right, yeah. So then now I saw Paul Rodgers performing at a festival many years ago, and he did a whole chronological thing with his music. And I think he started out with Free, did the Bad Company stuff, then went into The Firm.
Yeah.
You know, what era? No, actually that was in Chicago.
Oh.
It was years ago in Chicago. I saw him at a festival. In Itasca, a small town of Itasca. That was a great show. They used to have some great musicians playing there. I saw a lot of them there, but that show was really cool the way he did it. And you know, so what era of Paul Rodgers is your favorite?
Oh man, you know, I love Free. I love the rawness of Free, and you can hear the experimentation with those guys learning the instruments. You can hear Paul. You know, actually, I think he was probably a little more hoarse and rough back in the Free days, but you know, you could hear him growing up. So I really loved Free and the music of Free, but then I love Bad Company as well, and you know, when he started doing stuff with Jimmy Page, you know, that became something great. So I don't know if I have a favorite. I don't know if I have a favorite era of Paul Rodgers, and you know, the nice thing about Paul Rodgers, he still sounds, I mean, exactly the same. So he's been blessed with one of those amazing voices that just, it never changes. He just, recently when he went on the whole free tour a couple years back, he was singing all them songs in the same key.
Yeah.
40 years later, like it was yesterday. Some of them sang probably even better. So I don't know if I have a favorite era
Yeah.
of Paul Rogers.
I actually, when I first heard that he was going to be singing with Queen, I thought, okay, this is the worst lineup, the worst mix
Me too.
that I could ever imagine. But it wasn't terrible. I mean, it was really, I mean, his voice, just in general, he was able to make it his own. Like right now, of
Right.
course, they have
Yeah.
to make it sound like, like Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury, if there was no possible way that, that you can replace Freddie Mercury in that sense, and all you can do is mimic him. But Paul Rogers went up there and said, I'm Paul Rogers. I loved Freddie Mercury. He was great, but I'm Paul Rogers.
Right.
I am not going to imitate him. I'm going to do it my own way. And,
Right.
it worked. It worked. I thought it was
Well,
really good.
you know what? You hit it. I think you hit it right on the head. That's to me, that's probably the only way that he could have done it. And, Paul's great enough on his own that he was able to do that. I think with anybody else, I don't know if they could do that, but Paul sang Queen songs like Paul Rogers, and
Right.
it turns out it was a great fit. But I'm with you. If he would have tried to emulate Freddie, it would have been a disaster. But I think Paul's confident in his own voice, and he's certainly a big enough superstar that he doesn't need to emulate anybody, and he could never hide from his own voice, even if he tried. So I think
Right.
that is exactly what made it work. You hit it right on the head.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. All right. So now let's move into original music and Atomic King. So let's talk about that band a little bit. How did you form that band?
Greg and I were. I got a call from Greg. He was putting together a project, and we were actually going to play some Bad Company stuff. He was already in a project with Jimmy and Ryan, and they had another singer, and they had just finished up recording an album, and they were ready to make a change and asked if I would be interested in being the singer. So they sent over some material, and I loved the material. I loved, Jimmy and I go way back to the Crystal Vision days. Jimmy was our drummer in Crystal Vision, 30 years ago. So I love Jimmy, and I'd gotten a chance to listen to Ryan's guitar playing when I heard their first project. So I loved Ryan's playing, and I was familiar with Ryan, who he played with Mikey Bones and A.D. Adams. So I going back to what you said, everybody's kind of interconnected. So I've become familiar with Ryan's playing, and so Greg was playing with them in another project. So Jimmy snuck me over some of the stuff they were writing, and I went and met up with them, and I sang some melody lines and stuff along to the new material, and we chose to change the name, start fresh, and that's what we did. So we did that. We'd written, a dozen songs or so, and we decided to have a show. Greg runs Bizarre Guitar down in Phoenix, and we decided to have a show out in the parking lot. They do a big festival every year down there where they close the parking lot. So we set up, and our plan was to play for about a half hour, 45 minutes, which we did. And from that, Greg is friends with some guys that used to run sound, and they had seen videos of that, and asked if we'd be interested in doing our music on their label. So Jason Constantine over at Tone House Records brought us on and signed Atomic Kings to Tone House Records. We did so most of the tracks we did up in Vegas. Came back here, and I did vocals, and Ryan did some mellotron and some guitar stuff here in Phoenix, and then that was originally released on Tone House Records. And then we got picked up by Fire Rock Music Group, who then took it, and Jason and everybody at Tone House was nice enough to let us go on to Fire Rock. And so Fire Rock Music Group just released the album worldwide. So that just kind of wasn't a plan, but but it worked out great. And our first show was with Ace Frehley over at Marquee. Speaking of Marquee, so
nice.
it's been a great ride so far.
Well, what was the transition between? I mean, you're doing covers, okay,
Mm-hmm.
or you're doing a tribute, whatever it is. You're emulating another singer. You're doing their lyrics. You're doing their melodies, and now somebody comes up to you and says, "Here, write your own, put your own melody in there, put your own lyrics in there." What kind of challenge was that for you in the beginning?
You know what? When I first started, Crystal Vision was an original band, so my very first thing was always all originals. And I think the covers, I guess I was a little backwards because I didn't do covers and then originals. I was doing originals first. And I've always written on guitar and stuff, even when I'm doing covers. But so it was nice. It was nice to get back, and you never know what you sound like. Sometimes it had been long enough where I had been singing somebody else's songs for so long that I wasn't sure what I sounded like. So that was fun to find out what that was going to turn out to be. But it's just a natural thing for me. I think for me, my first instinct when Atomic Kings writes, we all get together, and usually the very first thing that comes out of my mouth is usually the best, and then you try to second guess yourself and rewrite it, and you end up always going back to that very first thing. So probably most singers are like me. I don't know if I like the sound of my own voice, and that you probably heard that 100 times from singers, but so that's always, you're always second guessing yourself. You don't have a baseline there for you. You don't have a guideline or directions. It's wide open territory. So
it's all
kind
you.
of the differences.
That's how when I was doing originals also, it was a matter of, well, I got to try to find my own voice and try to do my own thing. And, you got to be careful. You got to be careful not to add in that, one of those Robert Plant O's or Ah's or babies,
Well, you know what? You can't. Sometimes you can't help yourself. I mean, we are what we are, and there's, there are influences, and our idols had their influences. I can, when I listen to Robert Plant and Paul Rodgers, I do hear them, but I also can hear their influence as well. And I'm sure if people listen to Atomic Kings, I'm sure they can hear who my influences are, and that's okay. We're not copying, we're not doing this, but you're made of what you're made of, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, I know that I like the song that I have on my podcast. It opens and closes my podcast on the recordings is an original song of mine. And I'm singing on that. And I've had people come up to me and say, wow, you sound a lot like Geddy Lee. And
hello.
That's a big influence on me. And I was in a Rush tribute band for a while and did all of that. But then again, you go, I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't want to sound like Geddy in that song, so I'm so it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like, wow, that sounds great. You sound like Geddy Lee. And I'd rather hear that sounds great. That sounds so original, but that's not usually what we end up getting,
Yeah, but you know what? That's okay. I mean, that's like you said, you didn't mean to, but I mean, when you look at your background and you look at your influence and what you've always wanted to do or what you wanted to be, I mean, what better compliment is there than that, right?
Very true. Yeah, very true. So now Atomic Kings, where can people find stuff? Because I know it's everywhere now. You said it's worldwide.
Yeah.
What kind of medium is it on? Do you also have LPs, albums, or is it all electronic right now?
Yeah, it's CDs are it's on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, all of those.
Mhm.
Obviously the CDs can be bought online, Amazon, Target, Walmart. You can go online and you can get the CD anywhere. Vinyl has been released and it will be available. I want to say probably in about 2 weeks, maybe three from today. What do we July 21st or something today? So
Yep.
I would say first part of August we will have actual vinyl, so somebody
Okay.
can get the vinyl. And I know that I am excited for vinyl.
Yeah.
We have our records, and when we were kids, that was so exciting to pick up a vinyl record and pull the
Yeah.
sleeve out and put it on and listen to the music while you're reading the
Yep.
sleeve. So I know I'm excited, and I know the other guys are excited to have vinyl out. And so it's going to be interesting to see your own vinyl. But
Yeah.
I'm glad, because that seems to be the way music is going. Kids now. I think vinyl is now outselling CDs for the first time since who knows when. But
Yeah. Well, yeah,
uh,
CDs became very, digitized. The
yeah,
sound in general has just
yeah,
really not good when you're really listening to it. And an album has such a warm sound, to hear the music
yeah,
cleanly.
yeah.
But yeah, vinyl's definitely making a huge comeback with groups. CDs are probably gone. I hope we don't get cassettes back, because that was a nightmare.
Or 8 tracks. Don't forget 8 tracks.
Definitely 8 tracks. Um, yeah, but yeah, definitely vinyl making a huge comeback.
Yeah, I like what I like what vinyl does for music. I mean, you don't realize how much better vinyl sounds, but with with vinyl, it's a whole different world. When you could put a CD in and be out cleaning the yard or driving down the road, and it's background music and you're listening to it, and but are you really listening to it? And the neat thing about vinyl is you put it on and that's what you're doing. You're sitting there to listen to it. You're not driving down the road. You're not at a park. Your intent is to listen to music. So I think with vinyl, it's a different platform, but I think it's a world of difference in the listening situation. I think people will get the music more and pay attention more when it's vinyl, because I think you block out that part of time to listen to the record instead of put it on and then start the vacuum. You know,
Yeah, because it's like it can't be appreciated the way that it was meant to sound, because
right? Yeah,
nowadays everyone has it on an MP3, MP4, whatever they're using,
yeah,
and it's very digitized. But if you took the old stereos, remember how we used to buy the receiver separately and then the turntable
yeah.
separately, and then you had your big Marantz or whatever speakers you may have had on the
You had
side.
5 or 6 of them all
Yep.
stacked on top of each other. Yeah,
Exactly. And but when you played like an Emerson Lake and Palmer album,
right.
or
Oh, yeah.
it was phenomenal. It was amazing the way that the sound just filled the room, and it doesn't come out, doesn't translate that well on CD. So I hope that the
Yeah.
younger generation gets into it more, because they can really appreciate how music is, because
Yeah, and I
music.
think they are. I think it's the younger generation that's buying up the vinyl. So
Yeah.
I think it's great, and I know we're excited about it.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Now, do you guys have any other shows planned for Atomic Kings coming up?
Right now we are in writing. Right now we're writing new music.
Mhm.
We're hoping to get in the studio and record when we have a dozen or so songs ready, and that probably will be on Fire Rock as well. But so right now we're kind of in writing mode. If a good show comes along that makes sense to us, we would probably do a show. But we're not actively looking for a show just for the sake of of going out to do a show, then you kind of got to stop what you're doing and start
Right.
rehearsing and start working on the show, and it kind of takes you out of your writing mode. And um, so right now we're writing. We got together last week, and that we're just going to keep doing that. If like I said, if something comes along or a great show that we can't pass up comes along, absolutely, we would certainly do it.
Well, you did touch on that for a minute when you talked about the writing process. What is the writing process with Atomic Kings in a sense of, is it just we're going to go and bury ourselves in the studio and we're all going to write together? Or is it where a guitar player will basically write up something, write a riff, or will somebody physically put an entire song together and say, here's the demo, here's what we have to learn? What is the process?
With Atomic Kings, Ryan and Greg really they write the bulk of the music. Greg will have an idea, and or Ryan will have an idea, and Ryan has worked with Greg down at Bizarre Guitars, so those guys have a fortunate circumstance where they're working together. So if it's slow, they can run back and work on things, and when the whole band gets together, we will all put our piece in there. But Greg and Ryan, for the most part, bring the song ideas. Jimmy is a great writer. I mean, all of us write, but it's a great situation where there's nobody's trying to force anything. If Greg comes in with a great idea and him and Ryan have worked it out, and there's 80% of a song there, then we'll start working through it. We may adjust it, this or that. And, some songs are different. I think we have a song live. I think that we wrote that song in 15 minutes. And the riff for All I Want, which was the single off there, that single actually spent a couple of weeks at #1. That riff was actually a riff that Greg had written in the 70s and introduced it to Badlands, and for whatever reason, it didn't get used in Badlands. So Greg's had that riff forever. And when he brought that to us, we wrote it right away. So it's, every song is different. It's some songs will write themselves, and some are, do whatever they do.
Are they bringing lyrics to you, or are you writing a lot of the lyrics and melodies?
Yeah, I write 99% of Ryan, sometimes if Ryan's writing something, he may have a chorus in mind or a melody line of a chorus, and Greg the same way. So there's I certainly don't exclusively do the melody lines, but for the most part I do the vocal melody lines and all the lyrics and choruses. But that's not to say that Greg doesn't, hey, I got this idea in my head on this chorus line, or the same with Ryan. Sometimes Ryan will write a riff, or sometimes it'll just start with a chorus riff, and he'll send me just that riff, and he'll be humming something, and we'll turn that in and fill in the front and back of it. So I write all the lyrics and the melody lines, but again, that's not to say that some of those ideas don't come from those guys.
How do those ideas come to mind when it's like, all right, here's a song, go ahead and write? A lot of the lyrics is what makes the lyrics and the melody line for a lot of listeners, not musicians in general, but a lot of listeners will go by the melody line and the lyrics. Okay? Yeah. A line here and there. How do you determine what a song is going to be about?
It's like sometimes the song usually tells me. When I hear a riff or or a guitar melody, it usually makes me think of something. And we have a song called Escape. And as soon as Ryan started playing the guitar intro, it just reminded me of driving or traveling or going on a journey. And I actually wrote the lyrics to Escape while my wife and I were on the way to California. And I in fact had her drive, and we listened to the music all the way up, and I wrote the lyrics while we were driving to California. And it was inspired by the music itself. I probably most of the songs just made me feel something, and certainly I have a lot of lyrics that are just there, and the music isn't there yet. But
Yeah.
I don't like to force anything in there. Usually the music just makes you feel a certain way, and for me that's what you write about.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's always it is always the mood kind of
Yeah.
the music itself, that really and that's what I hear a lot of. It's like you said, the music kind of writes what the story is going to be about, and
Yeah,
it's
I mean, otherwise you get a jigga 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 I love you song, and they don't always fit together.
right,
So the mood kind of has the lyrics kind of got to follow the mood. You know,
right, right. Do you run into situations at any time to where something just doesn't like, are you guys finishing up the songs, or are you having a producer listen to the songs and say, okay, wait, this part doesn't fit, and let's put in one more verse before the chorus here? Does any of that happen, or do you guys handle everything on your own?
we handle everything on. I mean, we some of our songs are longer than usual. I think "Take My Hand" might be 9 or 10 minute song. I don't remember, but um, I know that there's been times when the label has wished that they were shorter, but
Oh, yeah, for
uh,
sure.
we don't. You know what, we write a whole song, and and we complete the song. We're our own producers. We worked with Jason over at Tone House when we were mixing, and he would come up with a mix and send it over to us. We would all listen to the mix and, hey, turn this up a little bit, add this. But for the most part, nobody changes the songs. When we write them all ourselves, and when we're done with them, that's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, because I've seen original music is really one thing that honestly causes a lot of bands to disband after a period of time. I mean, the famous one, of course, Pink Floyd, how Comfortably Numb just tore them apart because they couldn't agree. The two of them couldn't agree on where to go. Roger Waters, had to have it one way, so it was always a big issue. And in bands, that causes really big rifts because of creative differences. You guys feel that you get along, so well that you really don't have any kind of differences in that sense?
You know what? Lucky for us, we it does work out for us. Some of the bands, like Rush, for instance, Geddy Lee didn't write many of the lyrics. But in Atomic Kings, um, I'm for the most part in the singer, and I'm writing the melody lines and the lyrics. Greg is writing the bass, Ryan is bringing the guitar, and Jimmy's bringing the drums. And so, the four of us really come together, and there's not a lot of, I don't like what you're doing there. Can we change this or that? I think with what you're speaking to, sometimes in a lot of bands you get multi band members doing multi things.
Yeah.
Maybe two or three guys can play guitar, and two or three guys are trying to do a guitar riff, even though one of the guitar players is actually the bass player, and vice versa. Maybe there's several people in bands that each write lyrics. You take Pink Floyd, and you got Roger Waters, and back, remember Sid back in the day. But so you've got a lot of traffic in one area in some of those bands that you mentioned. But in Atomic Kings, we're probably um, we're probably more like the Bad Core, the Zeppelin style of writing, where it's a singer and a bass player and a drummer, and
Right.
a guitar player. And we don't. I don't get into trying to, and I don't need to. I mean, what Ryan writes on guitar and Jimmy on drums and Greg on bass, what those guys are bringing musically. There's not a thing in the world that I could come up with that's going to be better than what they've put. And I think all four members of the band feels that way. you know. So
Yeah.
you know, it's a
That's
it's
a
a
great
great
combination. That's
yeah
that's really good to have, because when people do have the creative differences together, if a band doesn't gel well together, it's disastrous. And
Yeah.
to be honest, it takes a lot out of you to do original music. I don't think people realize what's involved in doing an original song, and and how it's each one of those songs are like your children. You know what I mean? They're all part of you. And I don't think that people realize the emotion and everything that goes into it, and how if a band doesn't gel together well, then it just doesn't work, because it's either going to be you're going to all do it together, or you're going to kind of do it like the Who. Pete Townsend used to write every song, every instrument, every line, and he used to put them together in a he'd put together the song on a demo tape, and he would say, "Here, learn it.
Here, learn this way." Yeah.
And that's the way it was done, and Roger Daltrey, I think, was the only one who stood up and said, "Okay, I'm going to record my vocal. I'm going to do it the way I'm going to do it. Don't come in there with me. Your voice is a lot different than mine. Let me handle it." And that part worked. Of course, they never got along, but
yeah. And I could see that too. It's, and they say that's what broke up Foreigner. Lou Gramm, was for the most part was a puppet. He was an incredible singer. He was, but he was very often told what to sing, and it eventually, I think I Want to Know What Love Is was their big hit, but it actually broke up the band, because Lou wanted to do it one way and he was told to do it another. So, I think we're fortunate, and Atomic Kings is not the only band like that, but I think we are fortunate in that there's not two guitar players, there's not two bass players, there's not two singers. Yeah. We all bring 25% to the band, and I can't imagine a better guitar player, I can't imagine a better bass player, and I can't imagine a better drummer. So, there's certainly nothing that I, as the singer, is going to come in and tell Ryan what to play. Or
well, I think you brought up an interesting point with Foreigner, because one of the things that happened with Foreigner, and you're right, it was for that particular song. Bottom line is, the way they used to do it, which really causes a lot of rifts between bands. Mm-hmm. The way they used to do it is they would go in the studio, they would record the song, and then they would come out afterwards and they would write on a little piece of paper how much I influenced that song for royalties. Because when you put down writing royalties, and again, this is a lot of people don't know this, when you write down royalties, you put in a percentage. So when the guitar player, when they would write the song, and then the singer would go in, they would say, okay, well, I did 50%. I should get 50% writing credit. And they would always haggle back and forth with that. And in that particular song, Waiting for a Girl Like You, is that the musical? That's it. Yeah. Lou Gramm thought that, it was his vocal. It may not have been all of his lyrics, but it was his vocal. And he went in and wanted, 40% or whatever. And then
and he probably should have, and rightly so, really.
Yeah, but it kept on coming back and forth with it. And he was going like, no, I want, 80%. And, the guitar player's like, well, you really didn't do anything. I'm taking 90% or whatever. And Lou Gramm just eventually got so sick of it. He said, screw it. You can have it all. And he gave him the rights to the entire song, and it became one of their biggest hits.
Their biggest hit.
And you're right. That's a real issue with writing credits too, that, that a lot of people don't realize how much that can cause problems. You guys just do everything across the board?
Yeah. Atomic Kings does. Everything is 25%. And it doesn't matter to me if I wrote every lyric of every song on the entire album. It's when musicians come, as soon as you try and start keeping score or calculating how many minutes you put into a song versus them, that's the beginning of the end. And it, even if it doesn't break a band up, it breaks a band. The creativity, being comfortable around each other. When you're writing original music, you're vulnerable. You're sharing feelings. You're sharing thoughts and words and things you don't share in a cover band. Cover band, you're just copy. You're just performing something. You don't
Right.
really have any skin in the game. You don't have any emotion in it. But with original stuff, you're writing a very heartfelt lyric, or you're writing a very heartfelt guitar line, and so you're putting yourself out there, and as soon as somebody steps on those feelings, it's the beginning of the end. And so
Yeah.
for us, we from the very beginning, we're all splitting everything evenly. Doesn't make any difference if Ken came in and wrote the entire song, front to back, lyrics, everything, recorded it, produced it, and released it. 75% still goes to the guys. So that's the way we do it, and I think that saves a lot of friction and a lot of. My dogs are barking at the storm.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we created our own publishing company, and so we split everything that way. All the record sales are split evenly amongst the four of us. After the label is done, so it takes all of that out of it. It takes the stress. Who's going to get what out of it? Oh, can you hear my phone ringing when it does that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's all right.
So it takes that out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you guys are doing it that way, because that's a lot of things that new bands need to know when they get out there. There's a lot more than just sitting in a room and writing music. It does get complicated. It does get, unless you are, even the closest of friends, going back to the Beatles, Lennon and McCartney, there was money issues that caused, problems back in the day. So there was a lot of things that happened, and a lot of bands really need to realize that they really need to get along with each other and play
everything.
as a family.
It's everything, Anton. If you think about everything that you'd mentioned, if you go back and look at what broke up most of the bands, just about every one of them was because of what we just talked about. I think if you think about that, you go back to the Zeppelin, they had trouble. Jimmy, for the most part, had all the writing stuff, and I know that kind of caused a rift. But when you think about bands that broke up, it almost always boils down to the same thing we were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Musical differences.
Right. And I think that's where, unfortunately, that is the demise of most musicians out there. And, just got to learn to get along with what you're doing. And I think it'll work out if you find the right people. And I'm glad you found the right people. It sounds like you have, the greatest of people together. So, good luck to you and more power to you for bringing out original music, at this time. We really need new music out there. And, hearing something different, hearing something new, especially coming out on vinyl, very exciting for you and the band.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time. It's been a while that I wanted you on here, and, I know we've trying to get our schedule situated and stuff. So I do appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast. And,
well, it's good to see you again. I haven't talked to you for a long time. It's good to see you. Congratulations on the podcast. And I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Yeah. And good luck on the Atomic Kings. Keep things going. Let us know what's going on with it. Just keep posting that stuff on Facebook or wherever else you have, and let's get everybody out there to see you, and especially get that album when it comes out, because that's going to sound a heck of a lot better than any CD ever did. Right.
Absolutely.
All right, Ken. Hey, thanks a lot. Do me a favor. Stay on for another minute. When I end the recording, we'll go over a couple of closing things, but again, appreciate the time. And for the rest of you, thank you for joining Living in the Limelight podcast. I'm your host, Anton Scholl, and thank you, Ken, for joining us. And we will see you all again very soon. Take care.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Yeah. Thank you for joining our Living in the Limelight podcast with your host, Anton Scholl. Please feel free to comment, like, follow, share, and subscribe. And also add us to your playlist on your favorite streaming sites. Thanks again for joining, and we'll talk to you again next week.